Rave Mehta with Flow Capital, who's going to be talking about regenerative water.
Thank you. Thank you. So originally I was going to be on a panel, but they changed that around, so I don't have slides today, but I'll share kind of a little bit about my background and what we're doing in the water space. I have a family operating business. We build infrastructure such as roads, highways, bridges, airports, and water systems in the US. We've been doing that for close to 50 years now, put over $50 billion worth of infrastructure into the ground, and water has been a big part of that. I'm also an investor and have been investing in technology and frontier technology specifically that could have global impact. And a lot of the spaces that we looked at, water has become a key area for us to focus on. And we see that water is actually a top 3 global issue that's not being fully addressed or recognized. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I think about the water problem and the water space in general, and then we could possibly go into some questions. So we all know that 70% of the Earth's surface is water, but 0.05% of that is fresh water that's accessible to us. Of that 0.05%, this hydrological cycle has actually been completely manipulated over the last, especially several decades, from climate change and other regulatory issues and things like that. So there are 3 fundamental areas in water, the way I think about it. There's water supply, there's water access, and then there's water quality. Now, if there's no water supply, then water access is not really as relevant, right? And if there's no water access, then water quality is not as relevant. So water supply is one of the fundamental issues that is actually being up for concern and is not being fully addressed. And for example, the UN SDGs looked at water quality and water supply in the SDGs, but water supply is not in there. So it's been kind of a miss. So we decided to focus on water supply, given that we're in the middle of a global water scarcity crisis. So if we look at the conflict curve, we're seeing water supply affecting, nation conflicts. We're seeing the curve of that going up exponentially now. For example, when China took Tibet from India decades ago, the stories around it weren't accurate. The real reason they took it over is because they wanted the water on that side of the Himalayas to continue to supply the Chinese as it continued to grow. So underlying a lot of the conflicts, these green line issues, is actually water supply. If it's not the primary, it's definitely the secondary or the tertiary reason that a lot of these conflicts continue to exist. And these conflicts are going to continue to rise. So there's 3 primary drivers for what's affecting the water supply right now, this global water scarcity crisis that we're going to experience, or we are experiencing. The first one's population growth. So there's more demand on water as we know it. And this demand comes in 2 forms. One is water usage, drinking, showering, things like that, but also the water consumption through other materials like food, furniture, even our iPhones have a water footprint. So the cost to create and manufacture products has a carbon footprint and a water footprint. So the more we consume, the higher and exponentially higher does our water footprint and demand increase. So the second one is climate change. So the climate change has created incredible variability within our cycles. So what used to be 100-year floods and droughts are now 10-year floods and droughts. So we're seeing this exacerbated curve around how we manage water, and we didn't design a lot of our systems to manage water in these cycle times. They're designed for much, much larger cycle times. And the third one is regulations. Like a lot of these regulatory agencies that created these systems in the past have been outdated. So we're seeing a lot of use it or lose it rights that have pervaded the Western system, being enacted and creating malincentives for people to over-withdraw the amount of water or over-irrigate the amount of water that they need, just so they maintain their water rights. So the system is actually geared towards using more water less efficiently than to use less more efficiently. So what we do now is if you look at the freshwater allocation, 80% of that water is agricultural. 13% is municipal, and 7% is industrial. So from the agricultural, if up to 70% of that is over-irrigated, which is a big number, that means 50% of our total freshwater supply is potentially surplus or used inefficiently. So how do we capture some of that back? So what we look at is this water energy footprint, or this water energy nexus, where we know that it takes 20%, at least in California, 20% of our current water cost is is to actually energy cost is to move and treat water in California. 20% of our energy bills is just for water. Conversely, there's a big water cost to creating energy. If you look at hydrological and nuclear energy facilities, as well as coal and some others, there is a water cost to create energy. So that formula is kind of well known, but what no one's talked about is what is the water carbon footprint? So we know water is the largest effect of climate change, right, through floods and droughts. But what about now, where if these river streams are depleted, then the three largest carbon sequestration mechanisms, the forest, the wetlands, and the soil, are no longer functional. So once again, if the water's gone, then the trees start to burn, the wetlands dry up, and then soil turns to dust. So we have desertification. So we need to make water, these freshwater systems, fundamental to part of solving the climate solution, or part of the carbon problem. So carbon credits do not take into account water right now. So what we've been doing is focusing on creating a water credit system. So we created a platform called waterrecharge.org, where we buy surplus water from farmers and tribes, and we leave it in the river to help recharge these river systems. So we focus on endangered rivers, and then we turn them into credits. We get a third party to verify them, turn them into credits, and try to sell them to these corporations like Microsoft, Intel, Amazon, and so on and so forth, to offset their water use. So the economic cycle here is if we can get a movement around corporates offsetting water in addition to carbon, which, by the way, there's a growth curve there happening right now. So Microsoft and Intel several years ago announced they're going to go water positive by 2030. And then a lot of other companies have started following suit. But the way they do this today is they have to find a project, and then they have to partner with an NGO, and then they have to invest millions of dollars in that project, wait years for that project to manifest, and then do an audit and see how much water they can claim back, and then claim that on their CSR report. So that means you need a water team and a really strong water focus, which a few companies are going to do. But if we want a wide market to participate in this ecosystem, then we need to make that super simple. So that's why we're creating this water credit system, where all you have to do is buy a water credit from us. We do all that back-end work for you, and then you're done, just like you would with carbon credits. So you just check that box off. It requires half a FTE of your time, one employee's time, to measure and manage that, and more people can participate in that market. So we're seeing an uptick, an increase of people wanting to be better water stewards, and if we can make it super easy for them, then they're going to participate. And there's a driver and need to have a social license to operate from these corporations and these brands. So the next question I usually get asked is, well, how big is this market? Because the carbon market is over 300 billion, and that's taken over a decade to develop. Well, we know that the average CSR budget right now for Fortune 500 companies are around 30 million. And most of that's allocated towards carbon and other sequestration mechanisms. So if we could carve out just 3% or 1 million from each of these Fortune 500 companies, that's about 500 million potential in revenue right there to start. Now, we know over time that the penetration will go up and these budgets will go up. So we can see this growing into a multi-billion-dollar market, that is liquid and active in, becoming water positive in addition to carbon neutral. So now those two cycles tie together, because if you're water positive, then you're helping the climate as well, because again, the carbon sequestration mechanisms are now supported. And eventually, maybe those two markets merge. But right now, someone needs to do something to stand up a water market. So that's been the primary area that we've been focused on. The last thing I'd like to say here is, because I know this was a shorter time, is individuals and corporates that want to offset their water use, just go to waterrecharge.org. You can see how the whole system's set up. It's really transparent. It's very easy. And you could use your credit card to buy this. So it's about that simple. You don't have to have some big application process. We've secured over 10 billion gallons of water supply already in the Western U.S. We're focused just on the Western U.S. at the time. And we see this growing growing across the globe once we establish a pilot here. I spent time in New Zealand not too long ago, and that's a good example of someone using a regulatory approach to overhaul the water system, where they actually gave one of the rivers personhoodship. So a river in New Zealand has its own rights to flow and to exist. And then another river in South America has done the same thing. So we're slowly seeing some regulatory approach solutions, but that's going to take a long time. So meanwhile, a market-based solution we feel is the best approach. Thank you. The website is waterrecharge.org. My name, Rave Mehta. Okay. Oh, Rave, R-A-V-E, at waterrecharge.org. Or you could just talk to me outside here. I think I have time for some questions, right? A few minutes. Any questions? Okay, so as I mentioned, there's market size. So a lot of this is early adopter driven right now. So we have to engage corporates and individuals to buy water credits and offset their water use, and we do it by making it super simple. Once they're in the cycle, we see those numbers grow over time. So, yeah. Yes, yes. Yeah, either I or someone from my team is.
Okay.
Correct.
Where's it based?
San Francisco.
Okay. I'll come and visit you. I'm in San Jose.
Okay, great. Yes.
We have a situation here in Colorado where a single pivot in the San Luis Valley for an agricultural pivot is costing about $80,000 a month. And the San Luis Valley is the #1 kale and the #3 quinoa producer in the country. It's a really important crop area. And they're selling their ag land to developers. I mean, you know this story. I'd love for you to think about it, and I'll have them contact you in a couple of weeks to see what your thoughts are on how we can work with the system here in Colorado. Really thought it was an interesting conversation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. One more question? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.